Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Good evening to all and hope I am audible as well as visible to you all. Please confirm that. Right. Perfect. Perfect. So I am Basavaraj. So I'll be continuing the disaster management class where we have stopped yesterday. We'll wait for a minute or so and then we will start the class. Let them join. Let them join. Right. Good evening. Good evening to all. Good evening and warm welcome to the disaster management class, the second session. Perfect. So we were discussing about the disaster management, and yesterday we made an effort in understanding definitions like definition of a disaster, definition of vulnerability, definition of hazard, something called as risk, crisis, and apart from that, there is a need of development of the capacities or resistance by which we can decrease the vulnerability. So these things you should keep in the mind. Apart from that, we know that man-made disasters can be avoided or can be stopped, but it is the natural disasters which we cannot prevent, which we cannot stop. But the impact of natural disasters, the severity of the disaster, the intensity of the disaster can be mitigated or reduced by a continuous cycle which is used. We refer that as proper management of the cycle. And this disaster management cycle consists of three key phases: pre disaster, at the time, and post disaster. So, in the pre disaster management, we always talk about prevention, adaptation, and mitigation. Sorry, prevention, mitigation, right? So, prevention is in the beginning, then mitigation, then preparedness. Remember three words: prevention, mitigation, preparedness. And we refer that as risk management. And post disaster management talks about rescue, relief, resettlement, rehabilitation, which we refer that as crisis management. And during the disaster, we always talk about critical facilities which are provided, emergency facilities which are provided. They play an important role. So this is what we discussed yesterday. And we made an effort in understanding the floods, flood prone area of India, and the three zones plus the fourth zone, that is urban floods. And we were discussing about the urban floods as they are increasing because of the natural increase in area and also the economic activities which are increasing in the urban. So hence, because of the area which is added more due to the census definition and also other criterias, plus normal increase in the population, plus the economic activities which have increased in the urban areas. So hence, we find all these are responsible for overexploitation of resources, which in turn is creating many problems. Among them, problem one is the urban floods. Among them, one is the urban floods. Right. Now we'll continue from where we have left. Now, if you see the urban floods, in the urban floods, it increases the flood peak from 1 to 8 times, and the volume increases suddenly 6 times. This is mainly because of many reasons. In the urban infrastructures, we don't have permeable roads, so the water will not percolate downward. So, non-permeable surface, where the water will not percolate downward. Apart from that, we say no proper drainage facilities. So drainage facilities are also not good. Or uncompleted construction works. uncompleted work, and unplanned constructions. So because of that, the water will accumulate in one areas. And this water which accumulates is something which will increase the volume of the water in the urban area. So many times whenever heavy rainfalls are there in Bangalore, in Chennai, in Mumbai, in Kolkata, Gurugram, all the areas, wherever junctions and other areas where the construction works are there, you will find piling up of water takes place. Huge accumulation of water takes place. So this is where the conditions become very dangerous in the urban areas. Then it also occurs very quickly. The rainfall accumulation of water occurs very quickly. So when it occurs very quickly, then it is very difficult to predict. Very difficult to predict. Then as it occurs very fast, so early warning systems becomes a major problem. So there will be always a problem with early warning system. Problem with the early warning system because of the event which takes place very faster. And also, as the events are continuously being done, so it is difficult for preparedness also. It becomes difficult for making preparedness. So hence, the urban problems becomes more dangerous. Urban floods becomes more dangerous. They are not same as what we see in the rural floods, right? Then in the urban areas, we always find denser population and slums are there. And as the population density is high and slums are there, so it means that the vulnerability is very high in the urban areas. So we find they will have high vulnerabilities. High vulnerability. Right? Because of density, and slums, they don't have economic resources. So hence, these areas are high vulnerable in the context of the floods. Then here we find large amount of economic activities are there. It may be software industries, it can be manufacturing industries, right? Or it can be many types of construction works, etc., like textile industries and all. So here we find many industries, many construction works, etc. So because of that, whenever urban floods are there, so they will always impact these economic activities, and this will affect GDP of a country. It will affect the GDP of the country because it will affect the economic activities, right? Now, apart from that, vital infrastructures are also affected. So vital infrastructure means, take an example of roadways, take an example of railways. So when the roadways and railways are disrupted, so it is difficult to make the rescue and relief operation. So it makes difficult in rescue and relief. And also we find whenever floods are there, the water stagnation, sometimes it can lead to disruption of electricity. Disruption of electricity. So when there is disruption of electricity, communication is hampered. The instruments which runs on electricity are hampered. Again, it will have an impact on rescue and relief. Apart from that, whenever the water inundates, when the water enters into the infrastructures like hospitals or shelters, then it becomes major problem for rescue and reliefs. So hence the urban floods is completely different from that of the rural floods. So this is what makes the urban floods different from the other floods. So hence we have created a separate zone for urban floods called as zone 4 from the year 2007. Like urban floods in Mumbai, Gurugram, Kolkata, Chennai, all are having the same type of problems here. Is it clear? So this is some rough idea about the urban floods. Now next, the reasons for that. Heavy rainfall. Heavy rainfall, we have seen that heavy rainfalls are there in a short period of a time. Sometimes it can be in the form of cloud bursting. Sometimes it can be in the form of cloud bursting, etc., where the water will keep on accumulate. How the hospital and shelters are affected. When the floods are there, when the water enters into hospital premises, then you don't have any type of medical facilities to be given there. When the entire flooding takes place in the medical institutions. And apart from that, when there is no electricity, many medical instruments, they run on the electricity. They can't be. Right. Now, these are the reasons for the floods in general. So you can put them for general floods as well as urban floods. Both are there. I have shown the difference between the urban floods and rural floods, but the reasons are common for both. Right? Reasons are common for both. Then storm surges. So this is seen in the coastal areas. Wherever the coastal areas are there, so there we find during the storms, during the cyclones, during high velocity winds, the water enters into coastal areas. We refer that as the storm surges. And this is something which is affecting agricultural areas. Agriculture lands are affected. And if any industries are there, so they are also affected by the floods in the coastal areas. Then sudden release of water from the reservoir. So generally in the urban areas, we have the reservoirs which suffices the requirement, drinking requirement in the urban areas. Now, during the summer season, there will be shortage of water. But when there is a heavy rainfall, say June, July, August, and September, that is southwest monsoon. So if any reservoir is there, it will be filled by the rainy season. And during the rainy season, if the gates of reservoirs are opened, already there is heavy rainfall, and the extra water from the reservoir will make the flooding in that areas. So this is also one of the cause or concern. Now many cities have that. Take an example of Chennai. So if you take an example of Chennai, in October and November, we have heavy rainfall, that is in the northeast or retreating monsoon. So during that time, sometimes when there is a reservoir called a Chambaramkam reservoir, so when that gates of the reservoirs are opened, it will add extra water to the urban areas, which will make the floodings of that area. So sudden release of water from the reservoirs during rainy season. During rainy season. Right. Then global warming and climate change. Now, what is the impact of global warming and climate change? So in the context of global warming and climate change, one is that due to high temperature, the melting of the ice, which adds more water to the rivers. Melting of ice or melting of glacier, which add more water to the river. That is one. And because of the climate change, the precipitation patterns have changed. The rainfall patterns have been changed. Rainfall patterns have changed. So those areas which were receiving the rainfall for 40 days, the same volume of rainfall we are getting in 10 days. So heavy rainfalls in shorter spells. I'm repeating, those rainfalls which were there for 20 days, 30 days, the same amount of rainfall the place is getting in 5 days or 7 days. So hence heavy rainfall in smaller time. So we refer that as rainfall patterns have changed. Right. And apart from that, there are incidences of El Ninos, La Ninas, which are also responsible for heavy rainfalls. El Nino, La Nina, which are responsible for heavy rainfall. So during El Nino, we have a data where Chennai receives heavy rainfall during an event called as El Nino in the year 2015. So during El Nino also, some places will get heavy rainfall. During La Nina, some regions will get heavy rainfall. So we refer that as the global warming and climate change, where the rainfall patterns have been changed, the rivers are also increased in the volume of waters. Then unplanned urbanization. So we don't have any type of structure. So unplanned urbanizations are there. Construction activities are done in the lowland areas where they will make the stoppage of the flow, and where we find the natural flow of a stream is disrupted. So unplanned urbanization, it is mainly due to illegal encroachment. Due to illegal encroachment. Is that clear? Then, no proper drainage facilities. So we don't have the water which is accumulated moves here. So these drainages are always interrupted, maybe due to unfinished work or uncompleted work, or maybe due to the faulty plannings in the areas. So no proper drainage systems there. Encroachment of the natural sinks. So natural sink means we are talking about lakes, ponds, etc. So these lakes, ponds, etc., which plays an important role, which are also referred as wetlands, which are also referred as the wetlands. So we find illegal encroachment is being done in the areas where the lakes were there, where the ponds were there, where the water reservoirs were there. So many cities we find, Chennai, Bangalore, Gurugram, we find industries are set up on the banks of these. Industries are set up on the encroached areas of these water bodies. And that is what we have created, a concrete jungle, which is having no permeability. We have created concrete surface which has no permeability. Is that clear? Then we always find that debris are thrown in the rivers. So what are debris? When we demolish a house, so we always have solid waste, the bricks, the broken cemented, broken parts. So all these broken things, when we throw in the rivers, like in Chennai, we have Kuam, we have Adyar, we have Buckingham Canal. I'm repeating, in Chennai city, we are having Adyar River, Buckingham Canal, Kuam River. So generally, whenever in the summer season or when the old building is demolished, they will bring that solid waste and they will dump in these water bodies. So when they dump in these water bodies, the water body will become shallow. And when it becomes shallow during the rainy season, it makes flooding. So throwing of debris, it will make the water bodies shallow. And this leads to floods during rain. Right. Then no accountability. There are many departments in the urban areas, but no one takes the accountability. If you visit to any department, they say this does not comes under my particular section. So hence nobody takes the accountability. Then geology of that area. Now when you talk about geology of that area, it is associated with the rock stratas. There are certain areas where we find the rocks are non-permeable rocks are there. So when the rocks are non-permeable, they do not allow the water to percolate downward. This is somewhere we have seen in Kashmir, where certain patches there are non-permeable rock stratas. Whenever heavy rainfalls are there, they will not allow them to move downward, and hence accumulation takes place there. Geology of the areas. Then demography and environment changes. Demography means changing of the population structure. So with increasing of the population, the environmental changes, mainly because of over exploitation of the resources, cutting up of trees, absorbing of the sinks and all. So increasing the population and over exploitation of resources. And because of that, during heavy rainfall, the water enters into premises, habitation areas, and that is where the floods are seen. So these are referred as the reasons for the floods, right? So if you remember at least 4-5 reasons of that, they are more than sufficient. At least 4 or 5, right? Now next, We moved on to non-accountability. Means if you visit to department A, you complain him that in my location the water is entering, then he will say it do not comes under my department. So you can visit to Surface Water Commission. Then when you visit to Surface Water, then he will say it comes under PWD. You visit to PWD. So this is called as nobody takes the accountability of that particular. Right. Now, impacts of the floods. So when we talk about impacts of the floods, the first one is agriculture land. So in the coastal areas, when the flooding takes place, the coastal agriculture lands become saline. And when they are saline, they will lose fertility. Plus, if in the agriculture areas, the water stagnation, when the water stays there for that area, water stagnation. So because of water stagnation for a long period of a time, the crops damages takes place, which leads to damage of crops and livestock. Livestock means the animals which they rear. So huge losses will be there in the agriculture areas because of salinity increases and stagnation of water, which damages the crops and livestock resources. Then whenever heavy rainfalls are there, it will always make loss of life and properties. Many buildings, many homes, they will collapse. Many industries, they collapse. So loss of property and loss of life will be there. It damages many physical infrastructures, like roads are destroyed, railways are destroyed. Sometimes we find even airports are also flooded. So it makes hampering of the airports. Apart from that, many infrastructures like the hospitals or residential areas, so we find huge losses will be there. So it will always make huge impact on the physical infrastructures. Is it clear? Then there is always a problem of displacement, resettlement, and rehabilitation. Now, displacement means displacement of a people from the flood area to non-flood areas. So displacement of people from flood prone areas. Then resettlement, providing them homes, we refer that as resettlement. Now what is rehabilitation? Along with providing the home, you have to provide them livelihood. You provide them some type of activities which can become source of income. So rehabilitation means providing them livelihood. Provide livelihood. Right. So it means that earning has to be there. So if you provide only home to them, then from where they will feed their stomach? So for that, they need a livelihood. So it is to create source of income to them. So it is called as rehabilitation. So in the context of India, rehabilitation is major problem. We can make the arrangement for displacement. We can make the arrangement for resettlement. But the major problem is, along with resettlement, rehabilitation is the major problem. Because providing livelihood, providing source of income to them, it becomes very difficult. Because if you are displacing the tribal peoples, then these tribal peoples are not educated and they don't easily mix up with the common society. So hence, bringing them in the common realm is also difficult because of their socio conditions, because of their different type of customs which they follow. So hence, livelihood is a major problem in the context of any type of such displacements. Displacement means flood areas are there. From there, you have to take the accommodation of the people and displace them. That is one. Along with that, along with human displacement, there is also a problem of displacement of animals in the area. So many areas where we find the floods are there, they are the areas where we are certain domestic animals are there, certain stray dogs are there. So displacement of these is also a major problem. So displacement of animals is also major problem. Right. And apart from that, certain sanctuaries are there, certain protected areas are there. So when they are flooded, again, displacement of those animals is also a major problem, right? Then disease. So when the water stagnation is there, so that stagnant water will create large amount of vector-borne disease. It will create many type of vector-borne disease like malaria, dengue, etc., which are carried by many type of animals. Apart from that, whenever the submergence is there, the dead animal carcasses, they will also spread the disease. The dead animal carcasses, so they will also spread disease in that areas, right? Then this will also have an environment impact. So environment means the physical space. Always remember, environment means the physical space. It can be any area, it can be any type. We refer that as environment. So whenever submergence of areas are there, the vegetation is destroyed, the soil is destroyed, the air is polluted, the water is polluted, right? So hence it will have an impact on environment. So many pollutions will be there. So these are referred as the impacts of, yes, drinking water scarcity. That's what, the water becomes polluted. So we find all these things are there. Scarcity of drinking water because of the pollution and all. So these all are referred as the impacts of floods. Is it clear? Okay. Now, geology means if any areas, if it is having non-permeable rock, which will not allow the rainwater to enter inside the earth, so that flooding takes place in the surface. Now, urban flood management. How the flood management is done? One is coordinating with all the agencies. Coordinating with all the agencies. So agencies here, they are like the police department, the military, the medical department, and also during the floods, the special forces are deployed, which we refer them as the natural disaster response forces, the special forces, national disaster response force. So there should be proper coordination between them. Then only the rescue and relief measures can be effective. So this can be something which can make the rescue and relief measures effective if there is a proper coordination. Is it clear? Then forecasting, awareness and communication. So this is very important in the context of floods. So when we forecast that, when you give them in the beginning itself, some 1 hour, 2 hours in the early, then they will prepare themselves. Then they will prepare themselves in the context of the disaster. Because remember, the floods is weather-based phenomenon, and in weather-based phenomenon, we always have early warning system. Then mapping of urban areas. So whenever mapping of urban area is done, then we come to know that which areas are flood prone. So we will understand which areas are flood prone when the mapping is done. So once we have understood that it is a flood prone area, then we can avoid settlement in that place. Then you can avoid settlement in that area. And you can make the strategies. You can make strategies to reduce the impact of the floods there. So hence, mapping of urban area is very important because it is a vital thing in the context of urban planning. In the context of urban planning. Right. Then pre-monsoon desiltation. So what do you mean by pre-monsoon desiltation? Pre-monsoon desiltation means many drainages are there where they are filled with rocks, soils, plastics, etc. So removing of this silt, removing of the plastic so that the natural flow of the water is maintained, we refer that as desiltation. So it is removing of the soil, the rocks, debris or plastics, etc., from the drainage where the natural flow is maintained. Uninterrupted natural flow is maintained. So we refer that as pre-monsoon desiltation. Now, proper infrastructure. So here, when you are constructing the buildings, when you are constructing the roads, we should always maintain that these infrastructures will have certain amount of permeability, and these should maintain the natural flow of waters. Like, you don't have to construct the homes in the lowland areas which act as a barrier for the flow of the waters. Hence, we refer that as proper infrastructure is required in the construction. And also these infrastructures should have certain capacities which we refer them as eco-friendly characteristics. Eco-friendly characteristics which can allow the permeability of water, etc. Then portable pump sets are allowed. So portable pump sets in the urban areas, so that they can pump out the water from the residential areas. To pump out the water, pump out the water. So many times, whenever the residential areas are there, where complexes are there, flooding takes place. So if you keep a portable pump set, small portable pump set, it will remove the water and pump in the normal drainage. So by that, small amount of water is removed here. So we refer that as portable pump sets in residential areas or in any complexes wherever there is always the water flooding takes place. Then chlorinated or boiled water and clean food. This is for the health perspectives, because during the floods, water is not available, food is not available, and the area is always having a threat of disease. So you should always use chlorinated water, right? Then sprinkle insecticides in the stagnant water, so that the vector borne disease which are spread by the mosquitoes, flies, are reduced. So it is to control the vector borne disease. Vector borne disease which are spread by flies, mosquitoes, etc. Then provide emergency services, rescue and rehabilitation. So it is during the time of disaster and after that also. Provide rescue and rehabilitation, proper services, effective emergency services are provided there, like medicals. Sometimes you need certain types of instruments, first aid, etc. First aid, etc. So if they are provided during the need of an hour, so they will reduce the casualties. They will reduce the casualties. So these are how we make an urban flood management. Is it clear? So remember them point wise. If you mention point wise also, that is more than sufficient. Don't make much research data on that. So these points are more than sufficient, and they are valid for any urban area you are talking. Out of these, you will find 5-6 will be there in that particular urban areas, right? Now we have something called as sponge city concept. This has been introduced by China, and it is being adopted in many countries of the world. Now, what exactly is the sponge city in a very small nutshell? In a very small nutshell, what exactly is the sponge city? What is the concept of sponge city? Right? And what are the advantages of developing the sponge city? Focus on understanding. The sponge city helps, or it provides solution for many problems. It provides solution for many problems, like it provides solution for the urban floods. It provides the solution for the droughts. The droughts. How? By accumulating the groundwater. So here we find groundwater is accumulated. We refer that as water harvesting. Third, it also plays an important role in the global warming mitigation, that is climate change. It plays an important role in climate change, controlling the climate change or reducing the global warming. Reducing global warming, right? It also helps in increasing the biodiversity. It helps in increasing the biodiversity. So these all are the benefits of spongicity. And if you see these things, they all are done by using nature-based solutions. So they are nature-based solution. Nature-based solution. Right. So generally referred as NBS. Nature-based solutions, which are referred as permanent solution. Permanent solution. Now understand how the spongicity works. In the spongicity, major thing is that the surface should be made permeable. The surface should be made permeable. Permeable means that it will allow the water to percolate downward. Now, how the surface is made permeable? It is made permeable like instead of concreting, you plant grass, you plant trees there. So plant grasses, plant trees in that areas. So the greeneries are maintained. Or eco-friendly pavements. Eco-friendly pavements, which allows the permeability. So by this, the water will percolate downward. The water will percolate downward. We refer that as surface permeability by planting trees, grasses, etc. Right. Then when the water moves downward, controlled drainage is done so that groundwater harvesting is done. So this is controlled drainage. Controlled drainage into groundwater. So this is something called as water harvesting. This is called as water harvesting. Right. Then third one is restore the traditional wetlands, restore the traditional natural sinks or water bodies. Restore the traditional water bodies or wetlands. Restore them. Remove the silts, restore them. And not only restoring, connect these water bodies. Connect these water bodies. Connect the water bodies. So that spilling of water will not be there. If one reservoir is filled, then the extra water will move on to the second reservoir. And if that is filled, then it moves down to the third one. So connectivity has to be there. Don't disrupt that. Connect the water bodies. Where one is filled, then it moves down to second, then to the third. So this is called as restoring of the traditional water bodies and connecting the water bodies. Right. Then wherever urban areas are there, on the roof, to reduce the impact of the insolation, you plant certain types of the vegetables, greeneries, etc. We refer that as rooftop greening. We refer that as rooftop greening. Idea is accumulation of the water and allowing that to move downward and enter into the sinks here. Collection, accumulation, referred as rainwater harvesting, even from the buildings, societies, etc. So these are referred as the components of spongicity. Components of spongicity, which performs the solution for the floods, because proper drainage system, controlled drainage system will not make the spreading of water. Then permeable surfaces will allow the water to move downward, percolate downward. And this water which is accumulated will provide the availability of water during the summer season when there is a shortage of water. When there is a shortage of water. So in Bangalore, everybody is witnessing the same. In Mumbai, the same. In Delhi, the same. where we have made no proper measures to make sure the rainwater harvesting is done. Apart from that, we have made illegal encroachment of all the water bodies, and all the water bodies are not connected with each other. So hence, during heavy rainfall, they fill and the water flows directly to the oceans. This is what happening in the urban area. So in spite of having heavy rainfall, we are not making proper and efficient management of resources. So we are not managing the resources. If you see the data last year or before that, Bangalore receives heavy rainfall, but this year there is a shortage of water. Why? Because we made no effort to store, restore the heavy rainfall, and all the water bodies in the Bangalore are encroached. And moreover, we have made all types of payments which are non-permeable, and hence during heavy rainfall, the water slowly moves, percolates, and reaches to that areas. Right. So hence it is becoming major problem in the context of all those. Right. So hence we need to make sure that these concepts are making an effort to bring back the normalcy. Right. Then when you plant the trees, then these plants will absorb carbon dioxide. So these green bodies, they will absorb the carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. We refer that as carbon sequestration. So they absorb the carbon dioxide and they release the oxygen. They take intake of carbon dioxide and release oxygen by a process called as photosynthesis. Right. This is one. Second, when the wetlands are there, when you restore them, when the greeneries are increased, then the birds, the insects, the animals which moved away from there, they will start accumulating in that areas. So hence it will increase the biodiversity. It is increased biodiversity. This is what we refer them as the sponge city concept. See, controlled drainage system is when heavy rainfall is there. If you don't make barriers to that, then the water will flow directly and reaches to the drainage, and from there it will move on to the oceans. But if you make a permeable surface, if you make some stoppages to that, it will slowly percolate downward, and we refer that as controlled drainage system. Right. So please remember these things about the sponge city. Remember this slide. Right. So this is what we refer them as in the urban areas. Whatever I have explained, the same thing you will find here. Floods, shortages in the summer season, and it is nature-based solution. It finds a solution for groundwater depletion in the urban areas. So please remember these things. Is that clear? It is one of the important thing which has been initiated by China, and many countries are following. And this is how it looks like. Green rooftops, restoring of the wetlands, restoring of the lakes, water harvesting, connectivity. Right. So idea is permeability, collectivity, storage, by which it can provide solution for many events, many issues are there. So please read about this. Now in India also, we are making an effort to implement this as a pilot project, in Gujarat, more specifically in Ahmedabad. So in Ahmedabad, we are making an effort to make sure that this process is sustained. And this is with the help of National Disaster Management Authority along with the local. So NDMA has provided 50 crores annually for this project. And this includes many events like interlinking, installation of eco blocks, filtration of the tanks. When the water moves downward, filtration and more amount of water enters there. Then eco blocks are easy to fit, and they are having durabilities. And in the pilot basis, we have making an approach, and this is what the detailed are. So this is what the eco blocks and their advantage. Eco blocks always will have life, and they are easy to fix, and their permeability is also very high. Right. So along with that, it also gives something called as early warning systems and all. So this is a project which has been started. Right. Porous pavement means which can hold the water, and when it holds the water, it will allow the water to move. Porosity means absorbing capacity. Permeability means allowing the water to move. So please remember, porosity means water holding capacity. Permeability means allowing the water to flow down. So this is all about the sponge city concept. And sometimes in UPSC, they may ask a question, write a note on sponge city concept and the impact of that. Right. So it also has real-time monitoring with sensors so that it can provide the data to the people. Right. So this is all about your current affairs as well. Is that clear? Okay. Now, flood forecasting in India. Now, the flood forecasting in India is done by Central Water Commission, CWC. Now, how it does? It absorbs and make an analysis of the data. So surface water, when we talk about surface water, so it absorbs and makes collection, observation and collection of meteorological and hydrometeorological data. Meteorological means rainfall. Meteorological and hydrometeorological data. Hydrometeorological data. And once it accumulates that data, it will transmit the data to the forecasting center. It will transmit the data to forecasting center. Forecasting center. And then this forecasting center, it makes the analysis and formulation of the forecast. It will use the data and it will make analysis and formulation of the forecast. And this forecast which is prepared is disseminated. This forecast which is prepared is then disseminated. Disseminated through many apps, news, many medias. So it is disseminated to the people, either in the form of messages, in the form of radios, in the form of news, in the form of bulletins. This is how the flood forecasting is done in the context of India. Is that clear? Right. Now, flood disaster management, the same, whatever we have discussed, last point of that. One is flood risk analysis, which is done by making availability of the previous data and the present one. Risk analysis, that is before the event. Risk analysis. Then flood forecasting, that is early warning system. It is a part of early warning system. Right. Then reducing the runoff. So whenever sponge cities, etc. are done, then the runoff is reduced there. So permeability is increased. When the reduction of runoff is there, high volume will not be there. Reduce that by using many methodologies, by making the ground permeable, right? Or sometimes divert the water into different, we refer that as flood diversion. If this is the water which is moving, you divert that into different channels. We refer that as divert, so that it is reduced in the impact. We refer that as that. Then construction of embankment. So these embankments are referred as structural measures. So please understand the structural measures. Structural measures. So here embankment means it can be artificial embankment by barriers and all, or sometimes Natural embankments, we refer them as natural levees. Natural levees. In geography, you have read that. Natural levees means the mangroves, the vegetation, etc. Growing the vegetation there, or growing the mangroves. We refer them as natural barriers. Natural barriers. Then floodplain zoning. So the moment when you make floodplain zoning, then you can restrict or avoid the settlement. You can restrict or avoid the settlements. And also construction activities in that areas. Then conservation of natural buffers like the lakes, many trees are there, many greeneries are there. We refer them as natural buffers like lakes, ponds, trees, which are there. We refer them as natural buffers. Risk transfer. So risk transfer means, take an example of insurance. So when you make an insurance, the financial risk is transferred there. The burden is transferred. Insurance. It can be in both. It can be in the agriculture. We are having Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana and life insurance for the people. Like example, in agriculture, we are having Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Fasal Bima Yojana and life insurance, etc. So we refer that as risk transfer. Risk transfer, right? Then integrated watershed management. So we'll discuss that later. So when I complete the drought, then I'll take detailed discussion of this integrated watershed management. Then post disaster management, which talks about rescue, relief, and resettlement, which talk about rescue, relief, resettlement, rehabilitation, etc. We refer them as post disaster management. So it is about the crisis management. It is about the crisis management, right? So flood forecasting center. So when we talk about flood forecasting center, it is very simple. It is done by Central Water Commission. They will collect the data. They will observe the data of lakes, rainfalls, and then that data is given to the forecasting center. And the forecasting centers, they will be having their own statisticals experts. So they use that, they analyze that, and they will create a forecast. And this forecast, which is prepared by them, is disseminated to the local people of that area through bulletins, news, etc. Right. And this is how the floodplain mapping is done. Floodplain zonation or mapping is done. So this is called as zonation. And once it is done, once they know that this region is vulnerable for the floods, then they will not allow the construction in these areas. We refer that as floodplain no construction. If you are constructing, then they should be flood resistant building. If you are constructing anything, then they should be resistance or flood proofed construction, resilient buildings, which can restrict the flow of water or which can resist the water impact, right? So this is called as flood zone, and this is called as artificial embankment, and this is called as the natural levees. We refer that as natural levees, which is referred as fluvial deposits, the greeneries, right? So natural buffer means these things, which acts as a line of control there. Greeneries, ponds, lakes, we refer them as buffers. Buffer means something which is in between us and the event. So Nepal is a buffer state between India and China. In between that, we refer that as buffer. So here the buffers are the greeneries, the ponds, the lakes, which can absorb the flood water. Is that clear? So this is what you should remember in the context of any type of the flood. So this is artificial embankment, this is natural embankment, and this is how the natural embankment takes place. We refer that as fluvial deposit, fluvial deposits in the banks of the rivers. Is that clear? So please understand these parts, right? Now next, these are the terms. Please read them. What does the flood means, and what does the things are associated with that? You have already read that in geography, but again here there is no problem in reading them. So make a proper reading of the slide. Read this slide. So whatever I have explained, the same thing is been reflected here. Is that clear? Right. So I hope natural buffer is clear. And about the pictures, Nikhil, I have given you the same pictures. The pictures which talks about something called as buffers or something called as embankments. Done. Now next we move on to something called as the drought. Right. Now the moment when you talk about the drought, you have to understand that the definition of the drought. The definition of the drought is condition of dryness due to shortage or lack of water over extended period of a time. We refer that as a drought. And there are many indices to measure the droughts. Many indices are there. But the most common index to measure the drought is something called as the Palmer Drought Severity Index, PDSI, that is Palmer Drought Severity Index. So this is the most common index which is used to measure the droughts. And this always have a scale which is +6 to -6. +6 means it is wet area, and -6 means it is dry area. Dry area. This is something index which is used commonly in all the countries, including India. Apart from that, if you are reading your current affairs, there is something called as United Nations Convention for Combating Desertification. Very important convention, UNCCD, which talks about desertification issues, etc. Now, this UNCCD has given a report. It has given a report, and the summary of report says that in India has experienced the drought every 3 years. It means once in every 3 years, India has experienced drought. Once in every 3 years, India has experienced drought. And this data is from 1997 to 2017. So in between that 20 years data, every 3 years, India has experienced the drought. And because of the global warming and climate change, if you see the drought, it has increased in its magnitude. Magnitude means area. It has increased in intensity. That means its severeness has been increased. And it is also increased in the frequency. So hence we say, due to the impact of global warming and climate change, all these have increased. Right? So it is global warming and climate change. Global warming and climate change. So we find magnitude, intensity, and frequency have increased in the context of drought. And also, because of these, the rainfall patterns have also changed. So because of this, the rainfall patterns have also changed. And hence, we always find the droughts are predominantly seen in many countries. Now, as the word suggests, drought, it is not that as simple as it is. The drought is very complex in nature. Now, why the drought is very complex? It is because of its certain features. The first thing is it starts very slowly. It takes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to accumulate. So, very slow onset is there. Then it affects larger areas. We refer that as drought prone regions. Then its impacts are cumulative. It means that it accumulates one by another. So the drought, if you are reading, this drought will create dryness, and this dryness will create loss in agriculture. And this again can create forest fires, which can becomes the burden to the family and that. So hence its impacts are accumulated, cumulative. So hence it is very complex. Then it does not does any type of structural damages. So hence it is very difficult to quantify. They do not make any type of structural damages. Hence it is very difficult to quantify. Only based on the crops, based on the people's behavior, we can get something, but it is not completely which can be quantified. And the worst part is we don't know exactly which date the drought has started and which date the drought has ended. We don't know exactly the date. We can't predict the exact date from where it has started, and we can't say the exact date when the drought has ended up. Apart from that, we can't demarcate the exact areas. No clear demarcation of the areas. So they may be overlapping areas. So they are not like the national boundaries. They are not like the state boundaries where you can demarcate. So many times we find overlappings are there. Overlappings are there. Right. So no clear demarcation of the drought areas. So that's why this drought is very complex. That's why this drought is very complex natural disaster. Is it clear? So sometimes they may ask, write a note on unique features of the droughts. So these are the unique features. It's a very slow onset. Right. Next, in the context of India, the drought prone area has defined a 3 zones, and this is done by National Disaster Management Authority. And it has classified 3 zones in India. 3 zones in India, which are affected by the droughts. If you take the areas, the northwestern part of India is extremely affected. So this is northwestern part of India, like the Thar Desert and the part of Gujarat, which is extremely affected. And then there are certain areas where we find moderate droughts are there, like the Gujarat, the windward region of Western Ghats, and we find the central portions where we are having severe droughts. Severe droughts are there. So northwestern part, extreme droughts are there, severe droughts in the center, and then we are having certain types of moderate droughts in the western part of India, more specifically in the windward region or along the Western Ghats. But how do you define the 3 zones? So the 3 zones are defined by, the first zone is the triangular area which connects Jalandhar of Punjab, Ahmedabad of Gujarat, and Kanpur of UP. So this triangular area. That is called as the first zone. First zone is triangular area of Ahmedabad, Jalandhar, and Kanpur. Please remember this stretch. Then, second zone is we have Western Ghats, and this region is referred as leeward region of Western Ghats, rain shadow region of Western Ghats. So this is the second area or second zone. Rain shadow or leeward region of Western Ghats. Western Ghats. That is the second one. Right. And the third zone is, the third one is isolated patches, sometimes due to less rainfall. So we refer them as isolated patches like Purulia, Coimbatore. So these districts, they keep on changing. So we refer them as isolated patches. Isolated patches. And when you are writing your mains, you have to remember, or you have to find only the isolated patches which are affected. Sometimes these isolated patches, they keep changing. In 2023, if any district is declared as drought, it may not be there for 2025. Or if any district is there drought in the 2023, it may not be there in the 2020. It was not in the 2020. So these isolated patches, they keep on changing. They may be in this region, they may be in this area, or they may be in these areas. So we refer them as isolated areas, right? Less drought area. So they keep on changing. Sometimes if you are reading current affairs, in the northeastern part also we are having droughts, so they are called as isolated. So traditionally northeastern parts are not the drought areas, but now because of the impact of global warming, certain districts in the northeast are also affected by the droughts. We refer them as isolated patches. Is that clear? So please remember these things. Kanpur, Ahmedabad, and Jalandhar. Jalandhar in Punjab. Jalandhar in Punjab. Right. So these are referred as the three zones. So when you are writing mains, the drought-prone areas in India, according to National Disaster Management Authority, we refer them as the three zones. Three zones. Right. And these three zones are, the first one is the triangular area of Jalandhar, Ahmedabad, and Kanpur. The second zone is rain shadow region or leeward of Western Ghats. Rain shadow or leeward of Western Ghats. Right. You have to draw this map. You have to draw this map. Right. This is complex. You can draw this map. Any maps are sufficient. Any maps are. So here also, if you connect the points, they talk the same. They talk the same. Is that clear? Right. So triangle area, rain shadow of Western Ghats, and isolated patches. That is sufficient in defining the drought-prone areas of India. Right. Right. Now, next is isolated patches. Any areas which are declared by drought. Isolated patches are those which are declared drought in that year. Which are declared drought in that year. Now, next, we move on to types of droughts. So again, in the context of India, the National Disaster Management Authority has classified all the types of droughts in India into four types. Now, please focus on understanding these things. What are the droughts and what are the different types of droughts here? Four types of droughts. The first one is based on rainfall. We refer that as meteorological drought. Meteorological drought. This is based on precipitation. This is based on rainfall. Rainfall. If any area, if it receives the rainfall 25% less than its long period average. If it receives rainfall less than 25% of long period average, the data which is accumulated, then that area is declared as meteorological drought. That year, that area is referred as meteorological drought. So this is based on rainfall deficiency. That is first one. Second one is, if the area do not have rainfall, then we find the water table drastically falls in that area. And that leads to a second type of drought. We refer that as hydrological drought. Hydrological drought. Right. Now this hydrological drought is associated with the water table. It is associated with water table of groundwater. Right. Now what is water table? If you take this as a surface of an earth, and this is groundwater. This is groundwater, and the upper layer of this groundwater, the upper layer of groundwater is referred as water table. Water table. Water table. So we are talking about groundwater. Groundwater. Now, during the hydrological drought, this water table falls to great depth. So this water table falls to great depth. And this will lead to severe shortage of water for human beings and livestock resources. This will make severe shortage of water for human beings and livestock. Humans and livestock. Right, severe shortage of water to humans and livestock. We refer that as hydrological drought. Then third one is, if there is no rainfall, then at least bore wells, the wells, they are used for irrigating the crops. Now when there is bore well is also dried, when there is no rainfall, then the agriculture crops will get damaged. And that is the third type of drought. We refer that as agricultural drought. Agricultural drought. And during this agricultural drought, there is less moisture, or the water availability is very less during the crop growing season. So no or less moisture or water during the plant's growing season. During the plant's growing season. And because of that, these crops, they become dry and they die. We refer that as agricultural drought. Then the last type of drought is referred as something which is very severe type. We refer that as socio-economic drought. Socio-economic drought. Very severe type of that. So such crop destroyed means whenever dry season is there, fires will be there. There will not be yield. We refer that as crop destruction. Socio-economic drought. So what happens in the socio-economic drought? So whenever socio-economic droughts are there, abnormal of shortage. So abnormal shortage of water will be there. Abnormal shortage of water. That is one. Second, when there is abnormal shortage of water is there, it will lead to many type of health issues, disease, etc. It will lead to health issues. or disease, etc. Then, when there is a socio-economic drought, so there will be a shortage of food. So when there is a shortage of food grains, when there is a shortage of food grains, then we say it is a famine. So it can lead to shortage of food grains. Shortage of food grains. And we refer this condition as the famine. Now don't confuse famine with drought. A continuous drought can lead to famine. Continuous drought can lead to famine. And when there is health issues, when agriculture activities are there, crops are completely destroyed. So agriculture, the crops, they are completely destroyed. And there is no rural employment. No rural employment. And when there are no employment, crops are destroyed, then the people leave that area and they move on to different areas, which is called as migration, which leads to migration. Which lead to migration. They leave their area and they move on to different areas. We refer that as migration. And all these are characteristics of the socio-economic drought. So these are the 4 types of droughts which are explained by the National Disaster Management Authority. 4 types of droughts, like meteorological drought, hydrological drought, agricultural drought, and socio-economic drought. Is that clear? So these are the 4 types of drought, right? How there will be abnormal shortage of water? You should have certain basics things to understand that. When there is no rainfall, when there is groundwater which is not there, then always there will be abnormal shortage of water. It's a very basic thing. No rainfall for longer period of a time, groundwater is also depleted, then there will be a severe shortage of water in that area. That is basic things. Now understand the linkages. Understand the linkages. Focus on the discussion. Meteorological drought, if it is occurring for a longer period of a time, this meteorological drought can lead to hydrological drought. I'm repeating, meteorological drought leads to hydrological drought. Then, if meteorological drought is also there, if hydrological drought is there, both are there, and both will combinedly give rise to agricultural droughts. Both can create agricultural drought. Then, if any area where we are having meteorological drought, it is also experienced hydrological drought, it is also agricultural drought over a period of a time, then all the three will lead to something called as socio-economic drought. This is how the linkage between these droughts. I'm repeating, meteorological drought will lead to hydrological drought. Meteorological drought, hydrological drought, both will lead to agricultural drought. Meteorological drought, hydrological drought, agricultural drought, all three combinedly will lead to socio-economic drought. And hence, during the socio-economic drought, there will be abnormal shortage of water. There will be abnormal shortage of water. Is that clear, Priyanshu? Why we have abnormal shortage of water? LPA means long period average. So generally, we take 50 years data of that area. We refer that as long period average. 50 years data is taken. Right. So this is something which we refer them as types of droughts in India. Is that clear now? Meteorological, hydrological, agricultural, and socio-economic droughts. Meteorological drought means shortage of rainfall. Shortage of rainfall. So understand this. Meteorological drought, read this. The situations where any area receives 25% or less than long period average. If it is in between 26 to 50%, then we refer that as moderate drought. We refer that as moderate drought. And if it is more than 50% of deficit, then we refer that as severe drought. We refer that as severe drought. It is all concerned with long period average. So hence, 25% less than that is a dot, and 26 to 50% is moderate, and more than 50% less than the long period average. We refer that as the severe drought. Then agricultural drought. When there is insufficient supply of the moisture, we refer that as agricultural drought. Agricultural drought. Second, then we have something called as hydrological drought. Hydrological drought is associated with the groundwater. With the groundwater. Then we are having socio-economic droughts, where the entire fabrics of the society is affected. Entire fabric of society is affected. Of society is affected. That is rich, poor, workers, non-workers, everybody is affected. Everybody is affected. We refer that as socio-economic drought. Everybody is affected. Working class, non-working class, agriculture laborers, rich, poor, everybody is affected. Entire fabric of society is affected. Maybe because of health issues, pollution issues, shortage of water, all these. So we refer that as a socio-economic drought. Is that clear? So these are the four type of droughts which are declared by Indian Meteorological Department, IMD. Right. Now, in the context of India, always remember, the droughts are declared by concerned states. The droughts are declared by concerned state. Karnataka, Maharashtra, they declare the droughts, right? And when we talk about monitoring, declaration is done by the concerned states. The monitoring of the drought is done by Indian Meteorological Department. So please remember these two terms. The drought is declared by the concerned state, and monitoring of the drought in India is done by Indian Meteorological Department. Indian Meteorological Department. And these droughts are declared based on the drought manuals. They are declared based on drought manuals. So at present, we are having the drought manual of 2016. So based on the criteria which are mentioned there, based on the criteria and based on the parameters, based on the criteria and based on the parameters of drought manual 2016, concerned state government will declare the drought by gazette notification. Is that clear? And monitoring is done by Indian Meteorological Department. So these are two important points which you should remember. Right. Now, we also come across sometimes, which are always in the news when you are reading your current affairs, the northeastern parts of India, the central parts of India, they are experiencing flash droughts. They are experiencing flash drought. Now, what is this flash droughts and how it is linked with the discussion? Now, the moment when you talk about flash droughts, it is associated with less rainfall, less precipitation, or sometimes when there is a drought-like conditions or high temperatures are there. High temperatures are there. And also the wind velocities which are more. High winds are there. Right. So during that part, so whenever less precipitation is there, so the amount of water is less. So when high temperatures are there, so it will increase the evaporation and transpiration. So this high temperature will increase the evaporation and transpiration in the green plants. So hence we say it will increase evapotranspiration. It will increase evapotranspiration. And because of these two conditions, low rainfall and high evapotranspiration, the moisture which is available in the soil decreases drastically within a week. And such types of droughts, we refer them as flash droughts, right? So it is rapid onset or intensification of the drought. So the drought is affecting in an area since from 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years. Now, in that case, because of high temperature, high insolation, more evaporation, more transpiration, and the moisture is removed drastically in a very short period of a time, we refer that as flash drought. So it is set by lower than normal rates of precipitation, accompanied by high temperature, winds, and radiation. And together they are responsible for high rate of evapotranspiration, by which the moisture is lost. And this is where it is one of the major cause of concern in the context of present scenarios. So the highest frequency of the flash droughts occurs where primarily we found the tropical and subtropical areas are there. Tropical and subtropical areas. So these areas are vulnerable for the flash droughts. This is a report which says the tropical and subtropical. Tropical means 23.5 degree up to equator. Subtropical means 23.5 up to 35. So up to this 30 or 35 degree latitudes. Or generally subtropics means we say 23.5 to 30 degree latitudes. So if you are confused with this, at least you can say up to 30 degree latitudes from Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So 23.5 up to 30 degree is referred as subtropical area. That is 23.5 up to 30 degree latitude. This is called as subtropical area. And these are the areas which are affected by the impact of flash droughts. Now this is your current affairs. Sometimes they may ask, and the report says that the northeastern part of India, where we have the incidences of the flash droughts are there. Many parts, Telangana, Karnataka, Maharashtra, where we are experiencing the flash droughts, where there is a severe shortage of the moisture. Right. Now, factors which make the drought susceptible in India. So this is the last slide and we can have a break of 10 minutes after this. Factors which make the drought susceptible, vulnerable in India. Very important one. One is, in India, we have seasonal type of rainfall. We refer that as monsoon. So yearly and seasonal variations in the rainfalls are there. So this monsoon, if you see the characteristics of the monsoon, sometimes it can be early withdrawal. It leaves India very fast. Early withdrawal. Or sometimes delay in entry. Or sometimes we have monsoon breaks. So during that, there will be a shortage of water, which will affect the agricultural crops, right? Then a short span of fewer than 100 days in the southwest monsoon. Now, if you are reading your geography notes and current affairs, in India, southwest monsoon, which occurs for 4 months, June, July, August, and September, is referred as 100 days rainfall. Right. So 4 months, 30 into 4 is 120 days. So out of that 120 days, even if you remove 20 days, 100 days rainfall is distributed over a period of a time. Now, this rainfall which is distributed for 100 days, now we are getting that in a very short period. So hence, a short span of rainfall. So whatever huge rainfall we get for 100 days, we are getting that in a 20 days, 15 days, etc., which is where there is a huge gap between the rainfall. So this is creating the gaps. So one rainfall we have received in the month of July, then next will be in the month of August, then a huge gap will be there, then it will be in the month of September, which makes the dryness. And this is what we refer them as change in the rainfall pattern, right? Then loss of water during heavy rainfall, where surface runoffs are more. We don't have proper type of structures to make the storage, buffers, harvesting. So heavy rainfall makes all the water to reach to the oceans, right? Then less rainfall, over 33% of the cropped area. So net sown area receives very less rainfall. Net sown area receives very less rainfall. Net sown area, which is also called as rain-fed area, which depends on the rain. So we don't have proper irrigation facilities. Then it also talks about over-exploitation of groundwater resources, poor conservation, and storage mechanism. We don't have any type of this. And apart from that, we also use the groundwater for economical, deliberate usages, like use them for something called as drinking waters, minerals, distillery waters, etc. We refer that as groundwater mining. We refer that as groundwater mining. Water mining. Right. So where lakhs of liters, we fill them in distillery bottles, we fill them in the bottles somewhere, and then we sell them. So we refer that as groundwater mining. So illegal groundwater mining is also done. So they get the permission for a volume of water and they over extract beyond their permitted limit from the groundwater. We refer that as groundwater mining, which is also one of the major reason for the shortage of water. Then decline in per capita availability to the human beings and animals, even in the non-drought areas. Why? Because of increasing of the population and no proper management. The population is increasing, plus the usage has also increased. The usage have also increased. Then rapid deforestation, urbanization, and climate change, which has made the rainfall pattern haphazard, erratic, rainfall patterns. Right. Then limited irrigation coverages. So limited irrigation facilities are there. If you see the irrigation intensity of India, it is hardly 50%. It is hardly 50%. So irrigation intensity means the areas which are irrigated, the net sown area which can be irrigated. So it means that if any farmer is having 10 acres of land, if 10 acres of land is there, so only 5 acres of land is having irrigation facility. Only 5 acres are there where irrigation facilities are there. So it means that 50% is still rain fed. So 50% is still rain fed. It depends on rain. So please remember this. 50%, this is national average part. And that is why we are emphasizing on many irrigation schemes like Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, micro irrigation. So we are emphasizing on many schemes like Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, PMKY, right, which can have an accessibility of the water per drop, more crop, Har Khet Ko Pani. All these are where we are making effort to make sure that the irrigation facilities are increasing. Then faulty cropping patterns and overemphasis on water guzzling crops. Now this is very classical example of, if you take a state of Punjab and Haryana. Punjab and Haryana. So in Punjab and Haryana, after green revolution, they started growing the rice crop. the rice crop. And this rice crop needs more water. It is water intensive. It is water intensive. Now, in the Punjab and Haryana, to provide availability of water to that, they have to make irrigation. And this is over exploitation of groundwater. This is over exploitation of groundwater. And this makes the depletion of groundwater in Punjab and Haryana, which makes over exploitation, over usage, over exploitation of groundwater for irrigation. And that is what leading to depletion of water table, depletion of water table in the states of Punjab and Haryana. So in Punjab and Haryana, always we find these rice areas, always. Yeah. If rice is grown in the coastal areas like deltas, so it is a natural crop of coastal area. So rice is not the natural crop of Punjab and Haryana, where the rainfall is very less. So we refer that as faulty cropping patterns, where less intensive crops can be grown. If you see Punjab and Haryana, pulses are ideal, cotton is ideal, right? So maize is ideal rather than rice, because rice always need more amount of water. So when there is less rainfall in the Punjab and Haryana, they often they use irrigation methodology to provide water, and hence there will be always a shortage of water there. And that's why Punjab and Haryana are facing the depletion of groundwater, where the contamination of groundwater is seen because of over usages. Is that clear? So these are the factors which makes the drought more dangerous in the context of India, right? Then impact of droughts are environmental, social, and economic droughts are there. So now we can have a break of 10 minutes. So we'll start the class exactly at 6:45, right? So we'll start the class exactly at 6:45. Okay, it is already 6:37. 6:50 we will start. We'll start the class at 6:50. So welcome after a break. So hope I'm audible as well as visible to you all. Just confirm that I'm audible as well as visible. Done. See, when we talk about the rainfall, Simran, 50% of rainfall would not be called as extreme, because when we talk about the rainfall, IMD has separate criteria for rainfall patterns. For drought, different criteria. So both are different. For rainfall, they are given separate criteria. For drought, separate criteria are there. Don't get confused. Don't get confused. Yes, this year the monsoon got delayed. It is having an impact, and you can use the schemes mera like mera pani mera virasat. Yes, for the way forward you can add them, you can add them, right? So these are the terms which you should remember in the context of the droughts. Now, different parameters and different criteria are used there. For monsoon rainfall, different parameters are there, where they say normal monsoon, excess monsoon, large excess, less monsoon, or zero monsoon. So they are having 5 different parameters for declaring monsoon there. Now drought has different parameters, right? Now the impact of drought you can find in the environment, like dryness will be there, moisture will be there, vegetation will become dry, right? Then it will have an economic impact. Agriculture crops, agriculture yield decreases, productivity decreases, right? And industries are also affected by the droughts. Agro based industries are affected, working capital is also affected. Then social impacts will be there, like migrations. People leave area and they move from one area to another area, so migrations of the populations will be there, and it will create a huge gap between rural and urban. It also creates the gap between rich and poor. So large types of socio-economic impacts will be there: social impacts, economic impacts, and the environmental impacts will be there associated with the droughts, right? So economic impacts means the farmers, agrarian economies, agro-based industries. And when there is no yield or less yield, like cotton and many agriculture based industries, then it will have an impact on economy as well, right? So please remember the impact of the droughts, right? Now we move on to something called as, this is the definition. Whatever I had told, it is here. So either you can take the data which I have written in the PPTs, or you can read them 1 or 2 times. Read this slide which talks about drought and how it is different from others. The same thing which I have mentioned. If somebody has missed that, you can read here, right? Now, drought risk management. So as this is a process which is very slow in the onset, so hence the drought risk management can also be classified into 2 ways. One is referred as short term measures, and then we are having long term measures. Long term measures. Now, what are short term measures? Short term measures means the moment when the drought is there, you should provide drinking water. It means arranging the drinking water. Arrange drinking water, right? Then it is not the human beings. Along with that, many livestock resources are also affected, like cattle, buffaloes, etc. So arrange pasture for them. Arranging pasture for them. Pasture. Third one is, during the droughts, if it is socio-economic, then drought-like conditions will be there. And one of the way to provide quality of the food grains at affordable prices is the public distribution system. So strengthen the PDS. Strengthen the public distribution system so that there should not be any type of mismanagements out there. Then when we talk about these conditions, whenever the drought-like conditions are there, we always find that the rural economies, the farmers will always have a problem with financial issues. So in that case, an ideal way is either to waive off the loan. So loan waiver, waiving off the loan. Or in the agriculture, we always find short-term loans are there. Defer the short-term to long-term loans, or defer the loans, or convert the loans from short-term to long-term. Short-term to long-term. Long-term. So that the farming communities will not have any type of the impact. Then apart from that, when the people start migrating from rural to urban, so you need to provide certain types of employment opportunities. So the moment when the state declares the drought, immediately, the moment when the state declares the drought, immediately it will apply the employment program called as Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act is applied, so that they will get employment opportunities, and they will also get food grains as a part of that, right? So this is something which we refer them as the short term measures, right? Then in the long term measures, we always talk about many parts. The first one is watershed management. Watershed and watershed management. Now first, what is watershed? Any geographical area where the collection of water is done, where the collection of water is done and this water which is connected or collected is either from rainfall, melting of the glacier, or from rivers, from any sources where you collect the water. So this water which is collected is referred as watershed. This water which is collected is referred as watershed. And the proper maintaining of this watershed, so that there should not be pollution, there should not be misuse of that, we refer that as watershed management. That is reducing the social conflicts, avoiding the social conflicts, making the water not too affected by pollution, etc. We refer that as watershed management. It is a long-term perspective. Apart from that, government is also thinking something which has already started. We refer that as river linking projects. Even though it is controversial, yet it plays an important role in providing availability of water, because one of the important objective of the river linking is transferring the surplus water to the deficit area. River linking project, I agree that it is controversial, but here, as the government has already initiated the process, so one of the important objective of river linking project is transferring the surplus water, so that the per capita water is increased in the drought prone area. So it is one of the solution for the droughts. And in the context of agriculture, you can make changing of cropping pattern. Right. Plus, you can also grow those crops which are drought resistant. Drought resistance. So these are the long-term measures which are seen in the context of the drought. So short-term and long-term measures. Right. Now, in this watershed management, it is an evolution which has been done by Government of India. It started from 1970. So we'll try to understand what are the programs which are being made for watershed management, right? So the programs for drought risk management, or we refer them as watershed management programs. Now understand this. I have given the descriptions of every program. What does the program means and what are its objectives? I have given the description of all the programs. Now here focus on understanding programs of drought risk management. Now, the program started from 1970s. It started from 1970s. The first program is referred as drought prone area program, DPAP, drought prone area program. Now don't worry, I have given the complete description of that. DPAP, drought prone area program, right? So once we initiated a drought prone area program, then we come to know that the desert areas are totally different from that. So there is a difference between a drought and a desert. Now the deserts are permanent arid. The deserts are permanently arid. They are permanent. There is no rainfall or very less rainfall. So they are permanently arid are there. So hence we needed a separate program for desert areas. So hence we initiated a second program in the desert areas. We refer that as Desert Development Program, DDP. And the major objectives of this program was water harvesting. The major is water harvesting, right? Increasing greeneries, that is afforestation, planting the trees, afforestation. Then providing them livestock resources in the form of credit and subsidies. Providing them livestock resources like cattle, buffaloes, sheep, goats, etc., in credit and subsidies, so that they can provide them income even during the drought-like conditions. So it is about rainwater harvesting or water harvesting from any type of river systems, planting more trees, we refer that as afforestation, livestock resources, increasing the income of the farmers wherever the crops are not there. So we refer that as desert development program. Two programs were there. After that, we reached to the third part, that is during 1980s, where there were many wastelands were there in the panchayati areas. Wastelands were there, which cannot be used for growing of any type of vegetation, any type of crops. Barren lines were there. So we decided that why don't we use the wastelands? And hence the third program was introduced, which is referred as Integrated Wasteland Development Program. So the third program was to use the wasteland, and we refer that as Integrated Wasteland Development Program, IWDP. And the major objective of Integrated Wasteland Development Program is, in the rural areas we always find employment opportunities are less when the drought is there. So the first objective is to provide rural employment. The first objective is to provide rural employment. And the second objective is water harvesting. Right. So we refer that as Integrated Watershed Development Program. Right. So rural employment was generated and also watershed management was done. Water harvesting was done. So these three programs were there. So remember, these three programs, DPAP, DDP, and Wasteland, that is Integrated Wasteland Development Program. So many areas were there where overlapping was seen and much money was invested in that. All the three programs were having different guidelines. All the three programs, they had different guidelines. different guidelines were there. And as the guidelines were different, so they were not effective. Not effective. So hence, in the year 1992, a committee was set up under Hanumantrao. A committee was set up under Hanumantrao. And this committee suggested that you merge all the three programs with common guidelines. Merge all the three programs. Merge all three programs with common guidelines. Common guidelines. And hence, on the recommendation of Hanumantrao committee recommendation, all the three programs, the program 1, program 2, and program 3, all the three were merged into one single program called as Integrated Watershed Management Program. So it is referred as Integrated Watershed Management Program, IWMM. So I means integrated, W means watershed, M means management. So it is Integrated Watershed Management Program. Right. Now, this Integrated Watershed Management Program continued from 1995. From 1995, it continued. Then we reached to the stage in the year 2002 and 3, where to make it more stronger, to make it more effective, a decentralized approach was introduced. Decentralized approach was introduced. It means that the Panchayati Raj institutions were involved in watershed management. Local people were involved in watershed management. And this approach of decentralized water management, which was started from 2023, we named that as Hariyali. We named that as Hariyali. From 2002, this program is referred as Hariyali. After that, in the year 2008, the guidelines were restructured. To make it more effective, the guidelines were restructured. Right. Then it continued again from 2008. Then government thought that in spite of having more money invested in that, the program is not giving much effective. Why? Because accountability was very, very less here. And hence, to increase the accountability in the program, to make this program more effective, on the basis of recommendation of Niti Aayog, the Niti Aayog, from 2015 and 16, that is the date, the year, this watershed program is put as a component of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. So from 2015 and 16, this watershed management is now a component. It is component of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. That is PMKSY. PMKY. Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. So if you talk about the present 2024, so in this 2024, watershed management is a component of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. So this is called as the evolution of watershed management in India. Evolution of watershed management in the context of India. Very simple. The first program was drought prone area program, which talks about growing more amount of vegetation, livestock resources, etc. Then the second program is referred as Desert Development Program, long-term measures to restore the vegetation, livestock resources, etc. Desert development. Then the third program was Integrated Wasteland Development Program. It talks about providing employment opportunities and also creating rural livelihood. Then, based on the recommendation of Hanumantrao Committee, all the programs were merged and it is referred as Integrated Watershed Management Program on the recommendation of the Hanumantrao Committee. And it was started from 1995. And in the year 2002 and 3, it is referred as Haryali, a decentralized approach. Decentralized approach. And from 2015 and 16, it is implemented as a component of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. So if you take 2024, this is a part of PMKSY, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. Now, if you are reading your current affairs, PMKSY, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, has four components. Now, when you are reading your current affairs, please remember that the four components. The first component is referred as Accelerated Irrigation Benefit Program, AIBP. The second one is Water Accessibility, Har Khet Ko Pani. Accelerated Irrigation Benefit Program, Har Khet Ko Pani, that is second one. Third one is referred as micro irrigation, per drop, more crop. Micro irrigation, per drop, more crop. And the fourth one is watershed management. So remember, PMKSY, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, has four components. I'll repeat. The first one is Accelerated Irrigation Benefit Program, AIBP. This you have done in your geography. The second component is water accessibility. We refer that as Har Khet Ko Pani. That is the second component. The third one is per drop, more crop, which talks about micro irrigation. Per drop, more crop, micro irrigation. And the fourth component is watershed management. That is what we have discussed. So these are referred as the four components of PMKSY. So if anything is asked in UPSC, watershed management at present is a component of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. That's it. Is it clear? Now, apart from that, many programs were also there, like Niranchal program. So this Niranchal program is World Bank assisted program, and this program was in 9 states. In these 9 states only: Andhra, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Rajasthan, and Telangana. It was only in these 9 states. No other states were covered. And when it was applied in the year 2015, it was the largest watershed program in the world. And it is World Bank assisted. Is that clear? And it is in 9 states. The objectives will be the same. That is increasing the groundwater, coordinating with different institutions, bring the institutional changes in watershed management and accumulation of water. It means that to bring the behavioral change in the people. Right? Because these programs like Niranchals are community-based programs. They are community-based program. And if the community changes their behavior, if community actively involves, then only the program will become success. If the community actively involve, then only the program will become success, or else no community development programs can become success. So many community programs lose their charm when the active participation of the community decreases. So hence, to make these programs active to make these programs success, there is always a scope to increase or make the behavioral change among the people. So people should believe that this program is for us and we should actively involve in that. Then only we can get benefit of that. This is called as behavioral change. And many incidences are there. Like during the COVID also, the people were not agreed to take the vaccination. You have to educate them. And after educating them, then the behavioral change was there in the people. Then they accepted for vaccination. So such type of changing behavioral, where the people, where the community accepts and come forward to be a part of that program and make it successful, we refer that as the behavioral change of the public. It can be done by many ways: awareness, creativity, or educating them by different means. And all the programs can become successful only and only if community actively participate, if community makes themselves as a part and parcel of that particular program. So hence it is a challenge to make the behavioral change in the public, right? So please remember this perspective, as it is community based program. So this is one program, Niranchal program. After that we introduced a program which is called as Jal Jeevan Mission. Now this Jal Jeevan Mission has a tagline. It is about catch the rain where it falls and when it falls. Catch the rain, catch the rain where it falls, where it falls, and when it falls, when it falls. So it is catching the rain. So this year, if we take the time period of that, it started from pre-monsoon. It started from pre-monsoon and it ended up as the last day of post-monsoon, that is November 30. Post-monsoon. That is November 30, it will end. It means pre-monsoon, southwest monsoon, and northeast monsoon. So it is pre-monsoon, southwest monsoon, and the time of northeast monsoon, which ends by the month of November. So catch the rain wherever it falls, whenever it falls. That is the tagline of this. And it consists of 5 intervention areas. 5 areas where it works. One is water conservation and rainwater harvesting. And second one is renovation of traditional and other water bodies. Now this we have seen during the COVID. So when COVID was there, lockdown was there, and during the lockdown people were employed in many types of activities by using Manrega. So this Manrega was used in the rural area to dig or renovate the water bodies. So we used Manrega during COVID to renovate the traditional water bodies and also increase new watershed, make more lakes, more ponds, so that the water storage can be done. Apart from that, reuse and recharge the existing structures. And then planting more amount of trees. We refer that as afforestation. Planting more amount of trees. We refer that as afforestation. So these are referred as the 5 intervention areas of the program, right? So it all started with the novel cause of catch the rain and where it falls and when it falls. Second program. Then also we have the program loan waiver, means waiving off the loans. I don't know how to explain that. Waiver means if any farmer is having 5 lakhs loan, you say that your loan has been removed. Waiver means living off, giving off the loans. Okay. Then Atal Bhujal Yojana. So this Atal Bhujal Yojana, it talks about watershed management. It is exclusive watershed management. Exclusively watershed management. And this Atal Bhujal Yojana is implemented in these states only: Gujarat, Haryana, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh. So it is implemented only in these states. Right. Now, this program, Atal Bhujal Yojana, it is a 6,000 crore project. 6,000 crore project, out of which 3,000 crore rupees is the loan from the World Bank. So World Bank will give a loan or credit from the World Bank. And remaining 3,000 crore rupees, which will be given by Government of India. State government will not contribute anything. State government will not contribute anything. So we refer that as the watershed management. And this program will be up to 2025. It started in the year 2021 and it will be up to 2025 and 26. 2025 and 26. So this is called as Atal Bhujal Yojana, right? So along with that, if any programs are there, you can add to them. So this is very important in your current affairs. So any new programs which the government introduces, you can add them. So this is called as watershed management in the context of India, plus the programs which are associated with these, right? Now, drought risk management, whatever we have discussed, the same thing. Drought monitoring and early warning system, conservation of natural buffers like lakes, ponds, mangroves, vegetation, development of irrigation infrastructures like PMKSY, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, irrigations, micro irrigation, etc. Then drought prone area program, watershed management approach. This is what we discussed. River linking project, crop insurance, that is risk transfer, which talks about risk transfer. We have Fasal Bima Yojana, etc. Livelihood planning, provide them livestock so that their income is not hampered. Land use planning has to be done, like growing forest trees, changing the cropping patterns, use the land for watershed management, etc. Then strengthening the welfare schemes like Mandrega, employment programs, awareness programs, PDS programs, etc. Then response measures so that the losses will not be very high. So these are referred as the drought risk management in the context. Is that clear? Then that completed the two important sections. One is drought and second one is the floods. I hope it is clear. I hope it is clear. Is that right? Right. So Ananya, loan waiver means when you take some loan, when you're taken some loan, then the government declares that nobody has to pay that. We refer that as loan waiver. Right. Yes, Mera Pani, I have discussed that. I told you about that. Is that clear, Ananya, about the loan waiver? Atal Bhujal Yojana is something which we refer them as the watershed management program. Atal Bhujal Yojana is watershed management, accumulation of water. We refer that as Atal Bhujal Yojana. Is that clear? Drought risk management. So whatever we discussed, entire crisp is in this point. Jal Shakti Abhiyan. This is Jal Shakti Abhiyan. Catch the water where it falls and when it falls. Right. So we have discussed all these. Flash droughts, it is something when suddenly, due to the droughts, due to high temperature, strong winds, low rainfall, the drought converts itself into severe shortage of moisture. We refer that as flash droughts. Right. Reuse, recharge means some bore wells which are not working. When you make the recharging of the groundwater. So they will start working. We refer them as reuse and recharge. See, questions I'll be taking because only few topics have been covered. So Monday I'll take up the previous year question. So I'll take up Monday after the, or maybe in the end session, we will take up certain questions. And the last day we will take up few more questions there. Right. Okay. So now we move on to second part. And here it is about the mountains. It is about the mountains, hills, etc. So the mountains, hills, etc. Now these mountains, hills, etc. In India, we find many mountains are there. Himalayan mountains are there. Western Ghats are there. Eastern Ghats are there. Many hills are there. Palani Hills, Shevrai Hills, right? Then Ajanta Hills. So many hills are there. So we find mountains are there. Hills are also there. So these mountains and hills, they are the one which are most vulnerable. So these are the one which are most vulnerable. Most vulnerable for natural disaster. Most vulnerable for natural disaster, right? Then what type of natural disasters we find here? So generally we find the disasters like landslides, land subsidence, land subsidence. In some mountains like Himalayas, we have earthquakes. And certain areas where we have the glacial lake outburst floods, we refer them as GLOF. We'll discuss that in detail. Glacial lake outburst floods, etc. So all such types of events we will try to understand, which are linked with the mountains, hills, etc. Now these events, they have increased due to the impact of global warming and climate change. So global warming plus climate change, plus human factors. Human factors means deforestation, construction activities, etc. So because of global warming and climate change, so these natural disasters, they have increased in intensity. Always you should use these terms. They have increased in magnitude, and they have increased even in the frequency. Is it clear? So we always find this particular introduction. So when we talk about the mountains, hills, etc. Right. Along with that, we also have heavy rainfalls in the mountain regions. Generally, we refer that as cloud bursting. Very dominant phenomenon, which is seen in the Himalayan areas. Right. So we'll try to understand these disasters: cloud burstings, earthquakes, landslides, glacial avalanches, etc. Right. So we'll try to understand individually, starting with the first one called as cloud bursting. The first one is cloud bursting. Now understand here. According to the data which is given, there has been a substantial change in the rainfall pattern. There has been substantial change in the rainfall pattern. And that too from 2011 to 2020, where they have recorded the data compared to 1961 2020. Here they have found that certain areas where the rain have increased. If you see this area, the northwestern part of India, plus the parts of Gujarat and Rajasthan, And also the southeastern part, southeastern part, southeastern parts, and certain patches in the northeastern part, where we find the precipitation pattern has increased. It has increased to more than 36%, where the rainfall pattern has increased to more than 36%. So there has been a tremendous increase in that. Apart from that, apart from that, now we are having the monsoons, which is for 100 days. We are receiving the same amount of rainfall, heavy rainfall in shorter durations. We are receiving heavy precipitation in short duration. In short duration. This is mainly because of the impact of climate change. Now, what is that heavy rainfall and when it is called as cloud bursting? What is that heavy rainfall and when it is called as cloud bursting? And what factors make the cloud bursting predominant in certain areas? Now, if you take the Indian mountains like Himalayas, right? So, in the high altitude mountains, we find the moisture laden winds will be there. The moisture laden winds at the plain areas, which are warm, and then cold air will interact. So when the warm and cold air interact, they collide with the mountain. And because of the initial momentum, so this mountain will act as a barrier. This mountain will act as a barrier. And this barrier will make the strong lifting of this moisture laden wind. So this will make strong lifting. And the strong lifting will create a strong condensation. This will create a strong condensation. And this strong condensation will create a peculiar type of a clouds called as cumulonimbus clouds. Cumulonimbus clouds. And these cumulonimbus clouds, which are vertical clouds, so they will start accumulating the condensed water droplets inside them. They start accumulating the condensed water droplets within them because of the electrostatic impact. Now, when the cumulonimbus clouds at certain point, when they are unable to hold that, so all amount of water which is accumulated in the cumulonimbus clouds fall in a very short period of a time. So all these water droplets, they fall in a very short time and in smaller area. And such types of rainfalls where it is in high volume and in the shorter period of a time and in the smaller area like 20 to 30 square kilometers, and such heavy rainfalls we refer them as cloud bursting. So this is called as cloud bursting, and this is rainfall. And such types of rainfalls where the mountains act as a barrier. So generally in the mountains, we refer that as orographic impact. And this is seen in the mountain areas. Example, Uttarakhand, Jammu Kashmir, Sikkim, etc. So we already have an example of cloud burstings in Sikkim in the year 2023. Right. So such types of impacts, we refer them as cloud bursting. Now, whenever cloud burstings are there, huge amount of water flows downward. And this water flows downward is uncontrolled one. So hence cloud bursting will lead to uncontrolled floods. We refer them as flash floods. It will lead to flash floods. Flash floods. So this is what we refer them as a cloud bursting. But along with the area, what is the volume we are talking? So for that, Indian Meteorological Department has given two criteria for the cloud bursting. Indian Meteorological Department has said to classify any rainfall as a cloud bursting, the first one is any area which is smaller, around 20 to 30 square kilometers. It should receive a rainfall of at least 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters of rainfall in 1 hour. 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters of rainfall in less than 1 hour. We refer that as the cloud bursting. Or in the mountain areas, heavy rainfall which leads to disruptive of the properties, flash floods, then we refer that as a cloud bursting. So this is how the Indian Meteorological Department defines the cloud bursting. Definition of cloud bursting. Is that clear? Now, there are certain incidences. Where we find the rainfalls are not that as 100 millimeters, but still they have a huge impact, like the rainfall what we received in Kerala in 2019, 2018, etc., where heavy rainfall was there of the volume of around 50 millimeters or 5 centimeters of rainfall consecutively for 2 hours or within the 2 hours. So such types of rainfalls, we refer that as mini cloud bursting. So these are the terms which you should remember. Thus, you should remember. See, when you talk about conventional and orographic, they are your basic geography, man. So when we talk about orographic, if the air or moisture laden winds, they move upward because of some orographic impact, we refer that as orographic, like mountains, plateaus, etc. We refer that as orographic. Due to initial momentum, they collide and then they move up. And when they were moving up, they make condensation and formation of clouds. This is called as orographic. Now, conventional type of rainfall is heat induced. Pre-monsoon showers are conventional type of rainfall, heat induced. If any air is heated, it loses its density and raises up by itself. So no barriers, nothings are required at the equator. Or during the pre-monsoons, whenever heavy heating is there, high heating, high insolation, then that air is heated, and because of that impact, it loses its density and raises up, and it expands as its volume increases. So such types of lifting of an air which are heat induced, which is mainly due to heating impact, we refer them as conventional type of rainfall. So generally we define them in the equator areas or pre-monsoon areas. And monsoon areas or monsoon rainfalls are orographic, where the winds will collide to the barrier and they raise up. We refer them as the orographic impact. Right. Then we have something called as frontal rainfall, when cold air mass and warm air mass collides and they lift up. We refer that as frontal type. So convectional, orographic, then frontal. And apart from that, cyclonic rainfall, where the air which is lifted starts rotating. We refer that as cyclonic rainfall. So at least four you remember: convectional, heat induced; orographic, barriers like mountains, plateaus, hills; frontal, two air masses head on collision, warm air mass and cold air mass lifting up. And this air which is lifted up because of Coriolis force, when it rotates, then we refer that as cyclonic precipitation. So these are referred as four types of them, right? Then mini cloud bursting is when the rainfall is comparatively lesser than that of the cloud bursting and more than normal rainfall. So 50 millimeters or 5 centimeters of rainfall within 2 hours in any area is referred as mini cloud bursting. 5 centimeters or 50 millimeters of rainfall within 2 hours is referred as mini cloud bursting. Right. So these are the definitions of the cloud burstings and the reason for cloud burstings. Right. Then impact of cloud bursting. What happens when the cloud burstings are there? One is it will trigger flash floods. Large flash floods will be there. Then it will trigger the landslides and soil erosions. Heavy rainfall, it will trigger the mud flow there. Soil erosion and landslides will be there. So that's why whenever heavy rainfalls or monsoons are there, we find the roads are blocked due to debris which fall there. Big boulders will move down. Then it affects other infrastructures, like many hydroelectricity projects are there in the areas or settlements are there, so they are destroyed by the cloud bustings. Other infrastructures like hydroelectricity projects, it will affect the settlements, right? So it will affect the other infrastructures, roadways, etc. Then it will make the siltation of the rivers. Huge mud will fall in the river, and the siltation of river can lead to the floods. It can lead to the floods because the volume of water which is carried by the river is decreased in the context. Then loss of flora and fauna. So here many wild animals will be washed by that. Human beings will also be washed by that. Fauna means animals. So many wild animals, because in the forest areas we always find protected areas are there, like wildlife sanctuaries, right? So from there we find many animals are washed away, right? And also many humans injuries and deaths will be there. Flora means many plants, many weeds will be washed away there. So it means that it will create huge amount of loss of biodiversity, right? And also it will create economic losses. If any economic buildings like hotels, restaurants, etc. are there, so they all will be destroyed. Agricultural areas, they will be destroyed. So it will create a huge amount of socio-economic losses. Apart from that, it can also create a psychological impact like traumas. It can also create psychological impact. The fear, the trauma among the people who have witnessed this incidence of cloud bursting. It is something where, have you seen the movie Kedarnath? So in the Kedarnath movie, they have shown the Uttarakhand cloud bursting of 2013. So if you are not seen, please see the last glimpses of that. How the flash floods are there. How the flash floods are there, which are the results of the cloud bursting. Is it clear? So you have to imagine, then only you can write very good answers in the context of any type of the geographical or history. You put yourself into that place, then only you can write very good answers. So these are the impacts of the cloud burstings, right? Then disaster risk reduction in the context of cloud bursting. So early warning improvement is very, very important, because if you take this cloud bursting, so this cloud bursting, socio-economic means traumas, social impact. Economic means the property which is destroyed there. When you talk about the cloud bursting, this cloud bursting always very difficult to predict. Very difficult to predict. Very difficult to predict. Why? Because its operation itself is in very small area. It operates in very small scale. Very small scale. It means that the area is very small, that is 20 to 30 square kilometers. And second thing is, it is very less time. That is, time is also very less, 1 hour time. Right. So hence it is very difficult to provide early warning system. So hence we have to improve the early warning system. We have to improve the early warning system. Is that clear? Then it also talks about structural and non-structural measures. So please remember this. Structural measure means when you make certain types of impacts. So certain types of impacts means if this cloud bursting is creating landslide, if it is creating landslide because of the steep slopes. So what you can do is you can make the geoengineering works. Geoengineering works is there. Right. So what is geoengineering work in this regard? If the mountains are there, landslides are happening. So you can use the mesh. You can use the mesh here, the nets here, steel mesh, which can hold the soil, which can make the stable or stabilization of the or slopes. That is called a structural measure. Or you can grow more vegetations. You can increase the forest cover. You can grow more trees, or you can grow more vegetation. So such types we refer them as structural measures. So these are referred as structural measures. Non-structural measures means awareness. Non-structural measure means it is about awareness. It is about creating skills among the people so that they can prevent themselves in the context of this. Or it is about allocation, budget allocation. Right. So all these we refer them as structural measures. The policies, the guidelines which are given by National Disaster Management Authority, etc. So all these we refer them as the non-structural measures. Is that clear? So remember structural and non-structural measures, right? Then rescue and rehabilitation. So it should always have effective rescue and rehabilitation. Effective rescue and rehabilitation, or else the losses will be very, very high. Then there should be a proper coordination with different departments. Coordination with different departments, and coordination with different ministry, and also coordination with the special forces which have been deployed there. Specialized forces which have been deployed there. So there should be a proper coordination between all these. And apart from that, the training should be given to the local people. Training should be given to the local people. Generally in first aid, constructing of the small bridges, etc. And for that, a voluntary group of people is created during the events. We refer them as Apada Mitras. Voluntary. We refer them as Apada Mitras. They are voluntary. They voluntarily involve themselves in humanitarian help. Local people, Apada Mitras, local people, where they are humanitarianly involved in that. We refer them as the training of the local people, training of Apada Mitras, so that they can contribute in rescue and relief. Is that clear? So this is something about the beginning of the risk management, right? Now next we move on to a type of early warning systems. So updations is required. So always remember, early warning systems will always have to be updated. We should always make updation of that. We should always try to get cutting edge technologies. You should try to get cutting edge technologies so that more accuracy can be done. So at present, we are using these Doppler radars. So these Doppler radars, they calculate the precipitation based on wind movement. So they track wind movement, and they also track the speed of wind movement, and they also track the moisture which is being there. So based on wind movements, based on the speeds, they can give the early warning system about precipitation or rainfall. Early warning systems or rainfall. So we refer them as the Doppler weather radars. So at present we have made them set in Sonmarg and Srinagar, in Himachal Pradesh, in Uttarakhand, in Assam, and in Tripura and Meghalaya. So they are along all the Himalayas. Himalayas. So remember, Himalayas is spread in 11 states and 2 union territories. Himalaya is spread in 11 states and 2 union territories. Right. So we always need to make updation in the early warning systems. Right. Now, landslides and glacial avalanches. So this we will make certain introduction of that landslide and glacial avalanches, and in detail we will discuss that in the tomorrow's class. So generally when you talk about landslides and glacial avalanches, they are the part of, in geography, what we are studied called as mass movement. Mass movement. Right. So what is mass movement? It is a phenomenon. It is a phenomenon where we say that the rock particles, the debris, the rock, the mud, the boulders, the soil, when they fall from top downwards under the influence of gravity, we refer that as mass movement. We refer them as mass movement. So it is the transfer of rocks, soil, debris, etc. above the mountain downward, from above the mountain downward, under the influence of gravity, downward, under influence of gravity, influence of gravity. And such types of movements, we refer them as mass movement. We refer this as mass movement. Right. And this mass movement, examples of this are landslides. Landslide is a type of mass movement. Then rock fall is a type of mass movement. Earth flow, this you have done in your geography. Mud flow. So all these are the different types of the mass movement. Heave, yes. So all these are different types of mass movement, right? So among these mass movement, we talk about landslides. We talk about landslides in the context of the disaster managements. Yes. So these all are basics of geography, and here I am just making the summary of that. Right. Now, glacial avalanches. Avalanches means when the large amount of the glacier or the debris which are there on the mountain, when they fall in high volume with high velocities, we refer that as glacial avalanches. We refer them as glacial avalanches. So in the context of avalanches, if it is large amount of glacier which falls down with very high velocity, like around 60 to 100 kilometers per hour, or sometimes it is more. Sometimes it is more. The velocity is more than 60 kilometers. Sometimes it is 120 kilometers per hour. So such types of the movement of the debris where the ice is dominant, we refer them as the glacial avalanches or ice avalanche. Or sometimes it is only the debris which move. We refer that as debris avalanches. Or sometimes it is rock avalanche. Avalanche means moving with very high velocity. Avalanche means which is moving with very extreme high velocity. Is that clear? So glacial avalanches, this is seen in the Himalayan states. Glacial avalanches is seen in the Himalayan states like Sikkim, northeastern parts, Kashmir, right? So we find them which are in the Himalayan areas, right? And landslide means it is a part of mass movement. It is a type of mass movement where the rock debris and soils reaches to the ground. And generally this landslide is accelerated by two factors. It is accelerated by two factors. One is that because of large amount of deforestation. So whenever deforestation is there, it is loss of vegetation. Loss of vegetation. So this vegetation, which includes grasses, trees, they always hold the soil. So these vegetations, they always hold the soil. They keep the soil intact. So because of deforestation, when the vegetation is completely removed, then the incidence of landslides increases. Deforestation or loss of vegetation. So this will trigger the landslides like the socio-natural hazard. Club this socio-natural hazard. Right. So in the beginning I told, so it is where the human activities are accelerating. So landslide is an example of socio-natural hazard. This is one. Second, it also increases during heavy rainfall. If the rainfall is high, if the precipitation is very high, so during that large amount of debris fall. So when the debris fall here, the roads are blocked, railways are also blocked. So whenever this type of disasters happens, so roads, the railways, etc., so they are blocked. So when the roads, railways are blocked, so it will make difficulty in making rescue and relief operations. So this will make impact. So rescue and relief measures will be delayed. So when the rescue and relief measures are delayed, so that will lead to huge amount of losses here. That leads to huge amount of losses here. Is that clear? So this is something about the landslide. So tomorrow or Monday, we will take up the reasons for the landslide. So please understand what are landslides. So Monday, there will be class. Now, loss of vegetation. Loss of vegetation means this vegetation holds the soil. Holds. It will hold the soil. If the vegetation is removed, then the soil will become loose. So loss of vegetation will make the vegetation which will lose the soil. Is it clear? PPT means precipitation, rainfall, precipitation, precipitation or rainfall, right? Now, avalanches occurs because of global warming and climate change. When the glacier are heated, they will lose the friction, and because of that, melting occurs, and this melting reduces the friction and high volume of glacier moves downward, and they have increased due to the global warming and climate change. Is that clear? So difference between the landslides and avalanches. Avalanches are the type where the debris are flowing with very high velocities, like it can be glacial avalanches. So it is another name given, to that. Another name given to that. Glacial avalanches or debris avalanches when they travel with high velocities. And in the landslides, it is not always with high velocity. Sometimes it can be comparatively milder than that, but rock debris and other things are also carried away, right? So that is the difference between landslides, avalanches, etc. So uh, yes, I'll try to answer all these. So hope, yes. So by this we can conclude the today's session and make revision whatever you have done in the two classes, that is yesterday and today. Use them as an appropriate way to make assessment in the context of your further studies, and revise the first day's class, and that first day's class will help us to understand the crisis aspect, the risk aspects, etc. Right? So revise, don't get much stressed, be comfortable with the PPTs, read the PPTs, understand the PPTs, make the notes in their path. And wherever where you are finding any difficulties, make the separate impact and read them. And then if it is not there, then try to post a question. I'll try to answer in that. So Monday we will take up few previous year questions and we'll try to find how to write an answers for the same. Revise, update geography part, update with your current affairs, and take care. We will meet up again Monday. Happy weekend. Take care of your health, take care of your concern, because the monsoon has started. Thank you.